Welcome to Ranger Stories. My name is Tennyson Easted. I'm the creator of Jump Rangers. And this is the show where I read things that I'm writing in the Jump Rangers universe and probably edit and discuss them for your viewing pleasure. Today we're reading Chapter 1 of the work in progress Jump Rangers novel, A Game Called Conquest. This was supposed to be just another normal mission. Right up until the part where we started messing with the fate of the galaxy, me and the Sarge were just doing what we do. Before we had time to think about what was happening, let alone tell our side of the story, big, important grown-ups all over the colonies were getting red-hot mad at the Sarge and I. You know what, though? I'd do it again. I wouldn't change a thing. How many times has history been built, or decided, or written, or however it is that history becomes history? You know what? How does history become history exactly? My question is this. How many times has someone changed history by doing something they figured was just common sense? All the time, I bet. When people mess with the course of human events, I don't think it's because they have some big idea about how life is supposed to be for people in the future. Most of the time, I think it's because they love what they do. They care about what they do. Even when it's hard, they want a thing done right. Some people, other people, do not have the patience to do things right. If you care about what you're doing, you're going to have to push. These other people, they're going to push back. What happens next is history. Just because the big, important grown-ups say you're finished, or just because they say you're wrong, that doesn't mean they're right. Just as importantly, that doesn't mean you're on your own. The Sarge always had my back. Xeno Ranger Sergeant Goat. When all this happened, the Sarge was an 8-year-old kid with frizzy hair, coffee-colored skin, a goofy smile, and a gift for sneaking around the insides of alien spaceships without getting caught. Sergeant Goat was everything a Jump Ranger should be. Like most Xeno Rangers, he was more interested in alien stuff than a person with common sense should ever be, but Goat was always ready to do the hard thing. If somebody needed help, Goat was there to help. When big, important grown-ups started telling that little man that he'd gone too far, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here. And I'm going to tell you something. I used the word should twice in a row, so this is exactly what I'm doing this reading to overcome. So bear with me with this. But Goat was already ready to do the hard thing. Okay. Was everything a Jump Ranger ought to be? Like most Xeno Rangers, he was more interested in alien stuff than a person with common sense tends to get. There. We eliminated both of them. How do you like that? Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here. Before the Saurian horde invaded Earth, growing up was the part of life when a kid learns to care about the things that grown-ups need them to care about. Most of the time, it wasn't even actually important stuff like taking care of other people or taking care of the environment. Most of human history is just about people killing one another, hurting one another, and destroying the planet to score points in some kind of game. Growing up was how leaders got kids to stop playing their own games so we could start playing whatever game the leaders were trying to win. When the motherships of the Saurian horde filled the skies of Earth, our very own homeworld, they exterminated us like we were a disgusting, unsanitary infestation of bugs. This might be coming on a little strong for a kid's book. I'll take a look at that. Maybe our cities weren't as big as the ones they build on planets like Soros, but we definitely had cities. We had a whole world to ourselves once upon a time. Until that day in 2058, we were trying really hard to make that world into whatever it was we wanted to be. After the invasion, we survived by doing all the things that bedbugs and rats have done to survive humanity. Sneaking aboard their vast, bulbous motherships, we made homes in dirty little corners where nobody ever cleans. So we could probably just delete that first sentence. And then we can create a new paragraph. So, maybe our cities weren't as big as the ones they build on planets like Soros, but we definitely had cities. We had a whole world to ourselves once upon a time. Until that day in 2058, we were trying really hard to make that world into whatever it was we wanted it to be. After the invasion, We survived by doing all the things that bedbugs and rats have done to survive humanity. Sneaking aboard their vast, bulbous motherships, we made homes in dirty little corners where nobody ever cleans. When they landed on Saurian worlds, or docked with Saurian space stations, we'd sneak off that mothership and find a way to build a colony. Like pests, we spread out and multiplied across the galaxy. Kids are small, right? Fast. We learn things. Grown-ups aren't built to survive sneaking through a spaceship beneath the feet of a telepathic alien Tyrannosaurus Rex and an army of undersaurs. Kids can get away with doing that. Look, surviving is important. Holding on to what we have, that's important. That's what the grown-ups were doing, but surviving isn't enough. When Pick and Rookie founded the Jump Rangers back in 2187, that was the reason. Someone needs to be figuring out what these aliens are really up to. And not just the Saurian Horde, but the Loom robots, the Spore, the Devourers, all of them. Someone needs to find new places to colonize. Someone needs to take Earth back from the Saurians. Until the day comes when human beings can finally travel between the stars, all on our own, someone needs to help these grown-ups sneak aboard a Saurian mothership so they can make their way from one colony to another without getting caught by undersaurs. Matter of fact, that's exactly what the Sarge and I were doing right when this whole thing started. Matter of fact, that's exactly what the Sarge and I were doing when this whole thing started. That's better, actually. To be honest, I forget the lady's name. She was an engineer. Our job was to make her get to help her get to planet clearance out in Loom space, so she could study alien technology at Junk University. When everything went eight-sided, we were on a Saurian mothership called the Vitriol on our way to Planet Link. Anyone going from Saurian space to Loom space has to go through Planet Link, because Link is the front line in the war between the Saurians and the Loom. Get off a Saurian mothership, sneak across the battlefield, and the Loom mothership supporting their front lines can give you a ride to just about anywhere in Loom space. Of course, that's if the Loom don't catch you and kill you first. Together, 3 of us were holed up near the waste ejection system. Hiding inside the walls of the ejection airlock is noisy, but undersaurs are always trying to stay clear of the garbage hold. If humans are building a colony on a mothership, that's the place to do it. Nobody's colonized the Vitriol, but it's still a good place to hide. Our engineer lady was scared, which is a normal way to feel when you're hiding out on an alien mothership full of hostile alien dinosaurs, led by a telepathic predator the size of a Hercules mecha starfighter. Despite her constant worrying, we knew she was going to be safe. Getting her on and off the mothership was the hard part. When you're on a jump, the best thing you can do is stay hidden. But Jump Rangers live by a code. We have rules, and the truck rule is one of those rules. And that's why the Sarge and I left the engineer in her hiding spot and went exploring. Humanity's future is out there, and it's our job to go and find it. Maybe somebody wants to colonize the Vitriol. Someone should probably check the place out. Besides, I've been tinkering with my data deck. Multi-goggles can only get you so far, and I had the scanner that I'd built, and the Sarge and I were crawling through some vents into the guts of the mothership to see if it worked. Decades worth of old molted lizard skin and all kinds of gunk get caked into the walls of a Saurian mothership's ventilation system. When my scanner started picking up weird organic readings from somewhere far below us, I thought it just needed some calibrating. It wasn't the calibration. My readings weren't even coming from inside the vents. Sneaking through an access panel into a quiet maintenance room, the Sarge and I pried our way down into the power systems. Motherships take massive amounts of power to run. Huge main lines move power from the central octanator to every corner of the mothership, climbing deeper and deeper into the tangle of pipes and cables, through the thick, steamy air of the mothership's interior and the eerie red glow of Saurian power systems. The Sarge and I left the familiar safety of the mothership's trash facilities behind. Down there in the mothership's life support systems, things got too cramped for the Sarge and I to keep digging. Still, I was sure that there were life signs ahead. Small as they were, those life signs were complex. What's more, I could see that they were moving around. Understand this. I am not a reasonable person. Also, we had about 3 weeks before the mothership was going to arrive at Planet Link. Finally, I had access to one of the smartest engineers in all the colonies. Finding a way for the Sarge and I to squeeze our way into the ship's core systems was becoming a priority for me. and I had just enough time to try something really, really stupid. That's the end of chapter 1. That's 3 pages of text. Doesn't take long to read out loud, apparently. But I like where it ends. The one thing that I wanted to go back and address was that one paragraph that came on a little bit too strong. My wife agrees. Ippy Looney agrees. So, let's see here. So, growing up is how our leaders got kids to stop playing their own games so they could start playing whatever games the leaders were trying to win. When the Saurian horde descended from the skies, all that went flying right out the airlock. Maybe our cities weren't as big as the ones they build on planets like Soros, but we definitely had cities. We had a whole world to ourselves once upon a time. Until that day in 2058, we were trying really hard to make that world into whatever it was we wanted it to be. After the invasion, we survived by doing all the things that bed bugs. Okay, so I need to introduce that concept of pests, right? That's what I really need to do. When the Saurian horde descended from the skies, all that went flying right out the airlock. Instead of living like the lords, instead of living as the lords of our civilization, we survived by living in the walls of someone else's empire. Maybe our cities weren't as big as the ones they build on planets like Soros. See, that's nice because it brings the empire, and then we talk about Soros. But we definitely had cities. We had a whole world to ourselves. It kind of introduces the concept of human imperialism a little bit. I think that's nice. All right. Well, these are apparently going to be fast streams if nobody's paying attention and nobody's asking questions. So we're going to go ahead and thank you very much for watching. Thank you for showing up. This has all been saved, so it's going to be available on YouTube if people miss it. And, I think this is fun, and I think it's quick and easy, and there's just no reason not to do this every week. I am writing a new chapter of the Jump Rangers book every week, and I'm already 6 chapters in, so there's plenty of material to go through, and we will come back and do this again next week. In the meantime, this is just the first of many Jump Rangers streams that I am putting together. I haven't exactly finalized it yet, but one plan that's in place right now that we will certainly be following up on is a game that I'm going to run. I'll run through all the basic Jump Rangers content that I've written, all the pre-written missions and scenarios that I've got in the source material and in the expansions. I'm going to run those games for Federico Esteval, who is our concept artist. And the point of these games is going to be for Federico to start arguing with me every time I try to describe something. So we're going to use all the content that I've already written essentially as a vehicle for discussing and workshopping the aesthetic and the design of Jump Rangers. Some of these things will be things that Federico and I've already sat down and talked about. Other concepts will be concepts that Federico is encountering for the first time, and you'll get to hear his initial reaction to what's going on, and maybe even if you're on stream, talk with us about it as we discuss it. I think it'll be fun. It's going to be risky, of course, because, as I said, we'll be encountering a lot of these visual concepts for the first time, but Federico and I have a strong relationship, and if we end up going in a different direction than the one that we went on stream, I'm not really concerned about it. I think people are going to be happy with his work. We have a great collaboration. I know what I'm looking for from the universe, and he's getting a very strong sense of how my mind works and vice versa. So I think that bringing that conversation front of house is going to be entertaining for people, and I think it'll give people the chance to see a lot of the ideas that we throw away or maybe save for later, or just see how the collaborative process works in and of itself. And in the meantime, we get to tell a story. I think it's a stream with a lot to offer. The other thing that I'm working on, and this is a little bit further down the road because I need to clear up some time in my schedule for it, is that I would like to be generating, if I can, and this is a big if, so take this with a grain of salt, but I would like to be writing one-shot Jump Rangers adventure a week. And I'd like to be including that in the Patreon material. That's a lot to ask, but it's also an interesting challenge, and I think it would be really cool to publish a whole book of them at some point. So it's not wasted effort if I can make it happen. And if I am doing those one-shots, then either I will run them on stream or I will find someone who will. And that is a third game or a third session that we can have every week. And I have a whole list of ideas. These are the ones I really think need to happen sooner than later in some capacity or in some way. And maybe not every week. Maybe there's a way to ease into the one-shot concept. But we're going to get more actual play on stream as soon as possible for people to enjoy. And in the meantime, there's actually some actual play on the YouTube channel. So if you go to youtube.com/JumpRangers, we have a couple of play sessions that we ran during the pandemic. The game has become a little simpler since then, but the mechanics are the same. You're not going to miss anything. You're going to understand everything you're seeing. And the people that we're playing are fantastic people. One of them's my wife, one of them's my son, and one of them is one of my very good friends back in Washington, Danielle K. Jones. So you should join us. That's all for today. Thank you for watching Ranger Stories. I'm going to post this video on YouTube as soon as possible, and I will see you next week.